Hello everyone, Broke Rad with you once again. And today we're gonna be doing spark plugs and ignition coils on my girlfriend's 2009 Camry. They haven't been done in like 100,000 miles, and she just got an engine light. And we ran the code, and sure enough, she needs an ignition coil done. And remember, you really cannot afford not to. It costs $500 to $700 doing it in shop. If you do it at home, at least the thing that I'm doing today, about 200 bucks. Save quite a bit of money. First thing we need to do is we can remove this engine cover here. Should just pop off. Nothing special here. And there we expose our engine. Now, if you're familiar with Toyotas, the inline 4 has 4 spark plugs right in the middle. It's very, very easy to replace everything. Here, we can see we have 1, 2, 3 ignition coils. There's going to be 1, 2, 3 spark plugs in there. But also, well, this is a V6, so there's 3 underneath this, and that's what makes this car actually particularly annoying to get to, because we have this covering it, we have all of this stuff on the left, all of this stuff on the right. So I'm going to be trying to walk you through how we are going to get to those back 3. In order to access these back 3 spark plugs, we can clearly see that this cowl is in the way completely. So we need to take this off. First things first, we'll remove the wiper blades here, and those are just 14mm sockets. So you can go ahead and loosen them, pop them off. If you're having trouble just taking this off like this, you can't just push it, go ahead and give it a little push like that, and you get a better angle, and then it pops off. But don't be too hard on it. So the next thing we want to do is remove this upper cowl here. And there's typically a clip right here that you'll have to remove, and there's one on the other side. In this car, this was already removed. It was probably lost. It's okay because the hood itself actually holds that down. There's something else you need to keep in mind, is there's this piece of rubber that is connected back here. And you need to pop it off just like that. And you can see that's where it connects. And do that on both sides, and then this should be pretty free to move. Now we're going to be replacing the wiper motor, or taking it out. So you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 10mm bolts that need to be taken out. So loosen those, and then we're going to have to deal with the wiring harness. So yeah, take those out first, loosen it, and then we're going to have to disconnect this. So I've got all these bolts out, but now we need to remember this glass is fully exposed now. So if you yank that out and hit it, you might crack your entire glass, so be really careful. Also remember, this is still attached, and I've left it attached because this is really hard to pull out at this angle. So what you need to do is remove this clip. This one's broken on this car. There's also this clip. To do that one, you really just need a screwdriver. And be careful, but just loosen it up and it'll pop out like that. And now this is free to move, so we can move this whole thing out and lay it down here. So there's the cord, we got it all disconnected. Now we're trying to remove this upper cowl, and you can see we have 10mm bolts all around it. So find all these 10mm bolts. So there's 1, 2, 3. If you walk around, you can keep seeing them, right? There's 4, there's 1 down there, there's 1 here. Take all of these off, and then you should be able to take off this cowl. And I got a bit ahead of myself. These 1 and 2 over there, these bolts, these are 14mm bolts. Okay, so I'll also point out that there's 2 of these on each side. I thought it was just this one, but this one also needs to be removed. But now this is fully loose. We can pull this off, but again, you gotta watch that glass. But in total, you should have 4 10mm, 4 14mm. So this is the problem with this model. You can't just get back here and do the maintenance. The ignition coil, one of them, is right here covered by this bracket. So we got a little bit of work ahead of us to take all of this out so we can access it. And we can start with our air filter box. You can see we have a bunch of hoses connected. Just gently pull these off, okay? And keep track of them. You can take a video like me or take a picture beforehand. Take this one off. Just be gentle. We need to remove this one. It's got a clamp. So squeeze it, pull it back, don't lose the clamp. Might need 2 hands. Okay. Take this clip off, the mass flow controller. Okay, I got that off. This is connected here with a clip. Just gently ease that out. This box has a couple of these clamps holding it down. Take those off. We also need to remove this. This should be 10 millimeter. You can also see you can put a screwdriver on it. Loosen that so we can take this off. The last thing you should do before taking this out, this was clipped in here. Just gently pull it out. And then you can see right here, this is the last thing that's kind of pushed in there. So you push your box out, and then we're able to, that's completely free. And if you need to do your air filter, there it is. You can replace it now as well. Next thing we're doing is taking off this throttle body. You don't need to undo the the coolant hose. You don't need to undo this electric hose. You just have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 millimeter bolts that you need to take off. Okay, so we'll do that and I'll show you what it looks like. So we've got the 4 bolts out. We can now take this off, and you can really just set it down here to the side. You don't need it to fully come off. And we have this gasket here that we need to remove. This is the throttle body gasket. You can see there's actually a little kink there. And you will have to get a new one of these, but they're only like $4. Now we need to undo 2 12 millimeter bolts. Here's the first one. That one's easy. You just use a 12 millimeter wrench. That's all you need. The harder one is all the way back here, and this is where people struggle, is this bracket needs to come off, and it's hard to get to. So we're gonna start with the other one. Just again, all you need to do is use a wrench for this first one. So to get that more difficult one, this is kind of the setup we're working with. I've got a 12 millimeter socket to a really short extension, and I've got a impact driver that you can see rotates freely, and then I've got about a 6-inch extender to my ratchet. And that way, let me show you. If we get in here, you can see that this is able to latch onto it, and I can actually ratchet it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So here are those 2 12 millimeter bolts I just took out. The last thing we need to get the plenum off, at least with these bolts, is you're gonna have 2 10 millimeter bolts on each side. Then you're gonna have these 5 millimeter hexes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So start with the outside bolts, and then do a star pattern in here because this is plastic, you wanna loosen it up. And then we'll take off some tubes and I'll show you that. So there's the hardware, the 2 10 millimeter nuts and the 5 millimeter hex bolts. Set those down. So now what we need to do is take this clamp off, remove this hose. Same here, we're just gonna pull this hose off gently, and gently take off that electrical connector. With all that removed, the last thing we have is this hose, which I've already pulled the clip back, and just gently pull that off. Now, we can theoretically pull this plenum off forward. Remember, we have to clear the bracket on the back, and then you want to cover it immediately with a cloth. You can see the plenum is out, but this is exposed now. If you drop anything into here, it goes straight into your engine. It can be very bad. So get a shop towel or something similar and make sure you cover this, because we do not want anything to possibly go down here, okay? So there you go, that's covered. Now we have our 1, 2, 3 rear spark plugs that we have access to. To give ourselves a little bit more play to access these spark plugs, we're gonna try to loosen this harness. So you have 1, 2, 3, and on the side, right there, 4 10 millimeter bolts that you can loosen to give yourself a little more play. So you can see now, this is much more movable. I also took this piece of plastic off of this screw here. Now we're gonna disconnect these coils. You can see that actually in this car, it appears that
all of them have been broken off. Usually you have to lift up a clip and pull it off. These I think I can just pull off, but you need to pull off 1, 2, 3, and then on the back, 1, 2, and 3. Now that all these connectors are loose, you're gonna take a 10mm bolt, take off all of the 3 bolts on the front side, 3 bolts on the back side, and remove your ignition coils. You can see, once those are loose, you can just pull these straight out. Now, this car actually read an error code on this ignition coil, so I did get a new one that I'm gonna put in there. They're about $100 each, that's why I didn't wanna do all 6. But yeah, you need to remove these, and then you can see in there is that spark plug. So we're gonna take out all the coils, and then we'll do the spark plugs. All the ignition coils are out. So now we're gonna be using this 5/8 spark plug socket. You can see it's got a rubber grommet in the middle there to pull out these spark plugs. And this will actually hold them as they come out. So go ahead and remove all 6. So we got the first 3 spark plugs out, no problem. The back 3 are a little bit more difficult. Again, we're gonna use one of these adapters so that we can get into the cylinder, the piston itself, and then get that angle to unratchet it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the back 3. So there's our 6 spark plugs. Obviously varying degrees of conditions. They're all looking pretty rough though. Definitely time for a change. So I've got 6 new ones. Make sure you get the right ones. Just go to your local O'Reilly's or AutoZone and they'll tell you. And we're gonna put 6 new ones in. So now we're gonna put in these brand new spark plugs. But spark plugs have a specific torque specification. So you need to use a torque wrench. For these cars, it's 13 foot-pounds of torque. So you don't wanna over torque them. So we'll put it in, slowly screw it down, and then torque it down to 13 foot-pounds for all 6 of these. Reinstalled all 6 spark plugs. Time to put your ignition coils back in. Pretty simple. They just thread back on. You'll tighten them, and then we'll reclip them. Okay, all of these have been reinstalled, bolts tightened, reconnected. Now we'll reconnect our wiring harness. Again, there's gonna be 1, 2, 3, and over here 4 10mm bolts that need to be retightened. Our next task is to reinstall our plenum, but we need to redo these gaskets. So you have to take all of these 3 out, go buy 3 new ones. Again, go to AutoZone and tell them what you need. Here are the ones they gave me. We're gonna reinstall those 3. So here's the new gaskets in the plenum. They only go one way, so don't worry about how to put them. We're now gonna take the rag off. If this is dirty, I already cleaned mine, but if it's dirty, you wanna wipe away from these holes. You don't want anything in it, but you should go ahead and clean it, but be very careful. So then with this plenum, if you remember, this bracket goes on that side. So we're gonna turn it upside down and put it back in, and then I'll show you how to bolt it down. Plenum is back in. Remember, we're gonna have the 2 10mm bolts on the side here, the 4 5mm hexes in the middle, and then the 2 12mm bolts on the sides there. Hand start all of them, but don't tighten them down yet. Okay, so I've hand started the nuts, the 4 bolts, that nut. I'll remind you, the 12mm bolt is right there. I put that tube back, and same thing back over here. This 12mm bolt on the right there has also been put in. Now we need to torque these down. These do have torque specs. The 5mm hexes are 13 foot-pounds. The 2 bolts or nuts, sorry, are 12 foot-pounds. So do it in a star pattern, right? You don't want to just tighten up one side and then the other. Tighten, 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 tighten. So I've tightened all these to spec. Now we're gonna tighten again this 12mm hanging out there and the one on the back side. And if you want to do yourself a favor in the future, do not over tighten them. Make them snug, but don't over tighten them. With everything tightened down, remember to reattach this guy, this clip right here, which just like that. You're gonna attach this line back to here. We'll attach this line back to here, just like that. And then I'll show you the next step. All right, we're gonna put the throttle body on now. You need a new gasket. It's gonna fit in just like that. okay? And then we'll put the throttle body back on with your 4 bolts. So I'll get it started. These need to get torqued down to 7 foot-pounds, okay? With this tightened in now, we're gonna put the cover back on, tighten everything up. I'll show you. Okay, I just set this on top of here. So I need to replace this hose here. This hose is gonna go here. This hose hanging down here is gonna attach this. You can see that this hose is supposed to be in this clip. We need to clip these down. There's one. There's 2. We need to replace this clip here, this hose, put the clamp back, and then we need to retighten this. And the last thing real quick is replace this tubing back here. And to do that clamp, I'll need a pliers for it. But then go over everything again. Triple check it, take a picture before and after, make sure you've done everything right. Maybe take a video, make sure everything's good. Okay, so I set this back in here now. Remember, we're gonna have the 2 nuts on these, each side. And you'll have the 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts to deal with as well. Okay, so here's the lower cowl reinstalled.
We're now going to put the windshield wiper motor back in. So this is the orientation. If you remember, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 10mm bolts. It's going to go fit right up into here. Now remember to clip in the wiring harness again. And the wiring harness also will go into here to clip. That motor's been reinstalled. Once again, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. You can see I've threaded this wiring harness back to where it's supposed to. Now we'll put on this upper cowl. If you remember from earlier in the video, there should be 1, and on the other side, 2 little plastic plugs that go in here and keep it in. In my case, this car doesn't have them. We're gonna put it right on top of this. The upper cowl is now reinstalled. So I'll point out, we can see right that it's flush along the windshield. So there's basically a gap, right? And you need to fit the windshield into this gap here. Also remember on both sides that you have these rubber pieces right here. There's one over there as well that need to clip in. And then this is pretty sturdy, even without those little plugs that are not available in this car. Last but not least, we need to put the windshield wipers back. The left one is this one that kind of goes down like this. The right one, as you can see, is this one. We just put them back on their little motor mounts, tighten them up. Those are 14mm bolts. All right, so there's the wiper blades reinstalled. Try to put them back where they were initially. If it's a original glass, there are some black markings that show you where to put them. If not, this car is a little bit dirty, so I was able to find it. The very last thing we need to do is the engine cover. So put that on. If it fits, there's two little studs that it clips onto, and you're done. Good luck, everybody. Hopefully that was helpful.